have this conversation about the need for more revenues. One of the reasons why, raising new revenue always sort of uh, uh, causes problems, at least from an economics perspective, is that, taxes can create distortions within an economy that sort of alter the way people make decisions, whether they spend, whether they save, whether they invest, whether they disinvest. Raising taxes can also hurt the economy. And given we're sort of on the cusp of a situation right now where we're really not sure which direction the economy is going, is there a way, given the fact that we know that we need more revenue, $2 trillion of deficits for year ad infinitum, we need more revenue. We need a bigger boat, as we say. What's the best way to raise revenue in this current environment that is the least distortionary and has the least harmful effect on the economy? Does that exist?
Yeah, so Tori, it's an interesting question. So maybe it's good to think about it both in the short run and in the long run. I think probably in the short run, as you kind of implied in your question, it's probably not a great time to be raising revenues. The economy is very uncertain. The Fed is continuing to tighten. The job market is still very strong, but it is showing signs of slowing a little bit. It may be not a great time to do it in the short run. In the long run, it's inevitable. I mean, we're spending 24% of GDP over the next decade, and we're generating 18% of GDP in revenues. That doesn't add up. Mm-hmm. So we need to do something. I have been skeptical for the last several years about whether or not we can really get enough money through the income tax. Mm-hmm. We seem to have really reached the maximum rates that the political system was willing to accept. And there is no appetite in the political system to do anything about the tax preferences that blow such a giant hole in the tax code. Mm-hmm. So in that environment, you could almost say we've gotten what we're going to get out of the income tax, and we're going to need some new kind of tax to close this gap. And my guess is it's probably going to be a consumption tax. Could be a wealth tax, but I don't think a wealth tax is practical either politically or administratively.
Right.
So I think it's probably some sort of a tax on consumption.
So whether that means like a national sales tax or a VAT value-added tax, or
it could be a value-added tax. It could be, you could try to kill two birds with one stone and do some sort of carbon tax. Mm-hmm. Although getting a big enough number out of that is probably not realistic either. But something like that, I think, may be where we end up going. But in the long run, it's not happening anytime soon. It's certainly not happening in the current political environment. The other thing to just keep in mind on taxes is, that CBO baseline that Bob was talking about, that awful CBO baseline that Bob was talking about, assumes that the individual provisions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act actually expires or scheduled to in 2025. Both President Biden and most congressional Republicans have said they want it to continue, at least in some form. And at the Tax Policy Center, we estimated that extending the provisions of the TCJA would add $3 trillion more to the debt over the next decade. So,
when you're in a hole, stop digging.
when you're first in a hole, stop digging. Exactly, and nobody is talking about that. Of course, on the spending side, Republicans started saying they're going to balance budget in 10 years, and then they started throwing overboard all the ways to do it. We're not going to touch Social Security. We're not going to touch Medicare. We're not going to touch defense spending. We're not going to cut veterans benefits. And by the time you're done, you've got a system where you'd have to eliminate the entire rest of government, which probably isn't going to happen, just kind of a wild guess. So, we're stuck. We're going to have to make some kind of choice here, but we're not close to making it in the current political environment.